The Victory Sports Network's NAIA Football with Dannelly and Donley is brought to you each and every week by our good friends at Huddle. If it weren't for Huddle, we wouldn't have all the great video that we're able to watch to give you full analysis of NAIA football teams. Victory Sports Network's NAIA Football with Dannelly and Donley, brought to you by Huddle. Also, we say thanks to our friends at the Urban Edge Network. Urban Edge Network streaming NAIA Football with Dannelly and Donley on the Urban Edge Network. If you have not yet downloaded the app, make sure you download the Urban Edge Network app on all your devices and check out all the great NAIA athletics that they're going to have throughout the season. That's the Urban Edge app, another fine sponsor of the Victory Sports Network's NAIA Football with Dannelly and Donley. We got all the official business off the plate. Let's go ahead and get into the show.
NAIA football is the true version of what college football is supposed to be. And it is the best classroom experience an 18 to 22-year-old male can have. One of the most valuable parts of a college education is that experience. It's life in a microcosm, and it's just something special for a young man to have to experience.
And don't you let a moment go without thinking about what's there for you to reach out and grasp.
This is NAIA Football with Dannelly and Donley. I am your host, Jason Dannelly. Thank you very much for joining us here for yet another edition of jam-packed NAIA football talk. It's my favorite thing to talk about in the entire world. In fact, if you talk to most people in my life, they're going to say, I wish you would stop talking about that and talk about something that the rest of us can enjoy the conversation about. But because of that, I say I'm not talking to you people. You know who I'm going to talk to? I'm going to talk to Pat Donley, because Pat Donley will talk to me about NAIA football. What's up, buddy?
Jason, how are we tonight? I am looking forward to this once again. Hello to our loyal viewers and listeners out there, the crazy NAIA people of our great country. So looking forward to this.
It's awesome. You know, this is kind of one of those, this is the in-between show, because next week's show, we're previewing the first week of the season. Last week's show, we talked about the top players in NAIA football, of which I had like 3 mistakes on because I may have, 1, had a typo, and 2, also there's the occasional NAIA athlete that doesn't report to camp or maybe ends up at another institution. So my
Jason,
bad on that, everyone.
It happens. I mean, today's day and age, the mobility with NIL and transfer portal stuff, things certainly happen. So,
and unfortunately, there will probably be more. I mean, there's always a couple that if you go back and you look at last year's list, I think you'd be like, geez, that guy kind of started off the season. Then what happened? And you find either injury or maybe he just, school wasn't the right place for him and he needed to go someplace else. So it definitely happens at this level, to say the least.
It seems like, well, it's all levels, Jason. It seems like every player out there just seems to be like a free agent every single year. It's why I love so much those that stick around and play for 4 years and sometimes 5 with that red shirt. At their institutions they start with, I get something that's special, but it is kind of the nature of the beast in college football now. And certainly, NAIA is not, is not impervious to that either. So,
well, yeah. And if you just think about the NAIA and you think about the top players that are coming back into NAIA football this year, and you just go to that quarterback spot. I mean, look at a bunch of guys that have stuck around at their institution: Jackson Dooley, Jackson Wary, Shea Spencer, Mike Palandri, Zach Chevalier. Now, Chevalier is a transfer, wasn't really his choice. Iowa Western closed, so Pete needed to go someplace. Luke Gearin, Keely Watson, Carson Rogers. I mean, all these guys have been around their schools. And I think that's why when you mention those names, and you and I will get into it in this program as we kind of break down our national championship predictions, teams to watch, kind of get into all the conferences here and everything. When we're talking about the top teams in NAIA football, it's those teams because those guys on that list.
There's no question. Again, we not to beat a dead horse, we talked about it last week. It's the most important position in sports, Jason. I mean, look at the guys that are winning at all levels. I mean, guys as in the teams that are continuing to win. I mean, Patrick Mahomes has won a few of them already. Tom Brady was pretty good. The teams in the Division I level, those quarterbacks that have been a mainstay for them for a few years, the ones that are making the deep pushes. So,
well, and
the same here.
So to give everybody an overview, we're going to go through like each conference, kind of look at where my predictions were, kind of how I landed on those. Maybe Pat's going to throw out a thought on, who he thinks might win that conference. And we'll get done with it. We're going to come back and we're going to say, okay, it's December. Who's got in contention for a national championship? Who's a dark horse? We're going to talk about that all on this program. But to go something that you were just saying there, you mentioned Mahomes, and as everybody probably knows full well, I'm a Raiders fan. One of the big reasons the Raiders have not been good for several years, quarterback position. Maybe that'll change this year. We got Geno.
We'll see.
I don't know. Are you?
I think there's a lot of people tanking for Arch Manning. That's why.
Yeah. But Arch Manning supposedly saying he's coming back. So
if he's doing his uncle and his both of his uncles, they stuck around all 4 years in college. So
this day and age,
really easy. Yeah.
This day and age, the money that those guys can make, stick around another year.
Well, I'm hearing now, Jason, it's crazy. Like the Division I running backs are staying longer in college because they'll make more than they will in the NFL.
Yeah. Yeah. You'd be a workhorse, an absolute stud, and everybody on campus loves you, and you make a little money, and then you're the best running back, one of the top 5 running backs of the country, and you get picked in the 4th round.
That's how it works.
It's crazy. It's crazy how that position's changed, because back in the day when late 90s, like RB1, baby, you were drafting those guys high. Those were your key people. And I still, obviously, I'm a run guy. I love running backs.
Sure. We remember in our age, like even we were playing football, Jason, in the 90s, the guy that just handed the ball, that great tailback, the tailback got all the attention around school. The quarterback, you're the quarterback, but it's like, all you're doing is line up an I formation and hand the ball to that guy. It's pretty much all we did back in the 90s. Now, obviously, the game has certainly changed and the quarterbacks are the stars, but yeah, it was definitely a run-centric, running back, centric deal back all those years, 80, through the beginning of time, really until the modern era. That certainly has changed. So, yeah, there's no doubt it's the game has evolved. Certainly, we talked about the quarterback position. Again, why the focus is on those players. There's so much on their plates. There's just a lot to have to execute in these systems. So they have to have a guy that can pull the trigger and make those decisions. That's for sure.
100%, man. Hey, all right, let's get into it. Everybody, we can babble throughout all this, and we'll do our overtime and get into all the things that Pat and I just really want to catch up on. But we'll just start alphabetically as I kind of came out with these and get into the Appalachian Athletic Conference here. This was my prediction, and of course you can find all these previews on victorysportsnetwork.com. There's a NAIA preview section that has all the articles linked, everything you wanted to see to kind of get you juiced up for the NAIA season. Now, the coaches in the Appalachian Athletic Conference were pretty close to my ratings. They had Pikeville as their pick to win the conference, and I don't begrudge that. Pikeville was in the NAIA Championship Series last year, beat Baker, had a heck of a team. They've got 2 really good quarterbacks that are coming in to run that program and kind of run that run and shoot offense that they like to have there. I think they're probably going to put up 1 billion points a game again. I just look at what Reinhardt's coming back, especially defensively and on that offensive line. And I think this is kind of the year where Reinhardt takes back over the AAC, and just based on, what they've got returning off last year's squad that was, just that much away from, getting past Pikeville, getting into the NAIA Championship Series. After that, Bluefield's replacing a quarterback, replacing some key players on defense. Union has a new head coach. Point has a new head coach. Kentucky Christian kind of just, struggles in this conference. And Rio Grande, because it's not Rio Grande, in case anybody's wondering out there. It's not the University of Rio Grande. It is Rio, like Ohio, as I have been told.
Indeed.
Rio Grande, brand new program. You can't help but pick them 7th. So I still think the cream of the crop in the AAC is either Reinhardt or Pikeville. Yeah. What do you got for thoughts on that, Pat?
I totally agree with the top 2. I want to see somebody really take a hold of this thing and be above 500.
Yeah.
It's such a weird league the last couple of years. And I think those 2 top programs are really strong. And we were watching UPike last year, and it's like this is like the best 0-4 team we've ever seen. I think it started 0-4 or 0-5.
0-3, I remember for sure, because we're like, they're the best 0-3.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense. They have strong offense and playmakers, and you had a big, strong quarterback last year. I know they've got some guys coming in to take over that spot. But I love what they do offensively. I'm a pass happy guy. I'd throw it every down if I could coaching. So I enjoy watching him. But I'm kind of curious to see, what they have coming back. And I know Reinhardt. I mean, we played the national championship against him in 2017, playing the semis in 2016, playing in 2015, the first round. I've known this program, since the inception of the program, and they are exceptionally well coached, unbelievable talent in a hotbed of, North Georgia from a recruiting standpoint. So, that's a program I know to me should be a perennial power in this affiliation. And they just not been where they've customarily been the last couple of years, especially being out of the postseason. But those two programs are certainly, I think, battle it out. But I'd love to see one just take control over it.
Yeah.
I mean, just make it a thing where it's like there's no discussion of who's in the postseason. At least that at large situation. Obviously, win the league you're in, but maybe get in that large. And if one team's clear cut, they go 8-2, 9-1, 10-0, whatever it may be to win the league. But then there's an at-large that's right behind them. One of those two teams probably most likely. So, last year was just an odd deal where you have the conference champion is a 500 team. Pretty darn good. I mean, I thought they were a good 500 team. Probably should have been a lot higher than that when it comes to from a record standpoint, or better than that from the record standpoint. But it's an interesting deal. The team wins the league 5-5, it gets in the playoffs, then wins the playoffs. So go figure.
Best thing to happen for the AAC would be able to have somebody run the table, get through undefeated and then have another one-loss team. But all those teams have got tough non-conferences because they only have so many conference games. They're going out of conference. They're playing the Mid-South. They're playing in the Sun Conference. So in a lot of cases, like Reinhardt's first 4 games, very solid football teams that they're going to be going up against. If they come out of that 4-0, it's like, all right, here we go. We're going to get something done here. If they come out of it 2-2, they're still sitting good. They definitely don't want to come out of it 1-4. But there's just a very tough schedule for a lot of those teams because of all those crossing over to other conferences. And I really respect the AAC for doing that. Granted, they have to play non-conference games, but they're one of the leagues that really play a lot of other NAIA teams. And it gives us a really good metric to go, okay, the Mid-South is a little better. Maybe the AAC is a little better. It gives us a good place to kind of stand when it comes to that.
Yeah, those conferences at one point it was the Mid-South Conference. All those schools. That's what it was. And obviously with the expansion, especially in Florida and other places in the Southeast, we've broken up into these 3 essential conferences now in the southeastern part of the United States. So it's different. I do like seeing the overlap because there's some traditional games that you'll see early on with the Mid-South and the Appalachian especially. I agree with you. I think it'd be great to see someone really take control of it, but then I have a really good solid number 2 that would be in contention for an at-large.
All right, let's talk about one of the most competitive conferences in the country, the Frontier Conference. They have expanded this year. They've absorbed quite a few members of the North Star Athletic Association, which has dissolved at the end of last year. And it has split the conference into 2 equal divisions of 7, of course, East and West. And this is what the East looks like this year. You've got Montana Tech, Dickinson State, Valley City, Dakota State, Rocky Mountain, Mayville, and Montana State University Northern. So in true form, if you were going to split the Frontier Conference up, this is about how you would have to do it. The only thing, like in terms of East-West, that you maybe could have fudged on, you could have put Carroll in the East and Tech in the West. But these teams are going to cross over and play one another in non-conference games prior to when they get into their actual in-season conference schedule. So we're still going to get Montana Tech, Carroll. We're still going to get some of those crossover games that have been so good. So in the East, I do feel like this is really a conference I struggled with, Pat. And we've talked about it ad nauseum. People are probably sick of us hearing it or sick of us saying it. Montana Tech, new quarterback this year. Dickinson State, new quarterback this year. Valley City State, new quarterback this year. Dakota State, I think, is a dark horse in this league because they return a starting quarterback. Rocky Mountain, new starting quarterback. Mayville, new starting quarterback. Northern, new starting quarterback. So there's no real basis to say where you think the offenses in this league are going to go to. Now, Valley City State has got D2 transfer coming in there, the Cave Kid. Dickinson State has got some things they've worked on there. Montana Tech has got some guys coming in, some guys that have been in the program, but there's not a lot of experience playing on the field. So I land with Montana Tech and I follow them with Dickinson State. Depending on quarterback play, I could definitely see teams 3, 4, and 5, possibly even 3, 4, 5, 6 possibly contending in this half the league. But I think, just based on history, it's either Tech or Dickinson's league to lose as we start this year.
I totally agree with you because, like you said, you kind of scratch your head. It's like, boy, this is kind of a difficult one because of the quarterback situation, like you said. But when you look at number 1 and 2, they're more the traditional powers of the postseason teams or teams that have been in the postseason, quite a bit over their existence. And they're physical teams too, where I think they're not I shouldn't say as quarterback centric as some others that we'll talk about today. Even though quarterback is obviously very important, and they've had really good ones at those schools. But I think it's more of a run-heavy, physical approach offensively for both of those programs. And I do think they're a clear cut for me, at least, and just from what is returning, some good defensive players on both sides, some guys up front that are coming back, physical teams. And that's going to obviously help a new quarterback, a new starter come in and get assembly with a running game. It's going to really help. That's the quarterback's, again, cliche coach stuff here. That's the quarterback's best friend is the running game. So I think you're going to get that with both of those schools as they break in that new quarterback. So great football programs, traditions. They've had postseason success. They know what it takes to win. Good coaching staffs, all those different things. So I definitely agree with you, those two. And they're physical, man. It's going to bode well early in the season, getting that new quarterback assimilated to college football.
And not to begrudge anybody in that league, but I think the first 3 or 4 games for all those teams in that half of this conference it's going to be ugly. You're gonna have some bumps, you're gonna have some bruises. Teams are going to win, but they're not going to win the way that they win game 3 is not going to be how they win game 10 at the end of the year, if that makes any sense to anyone. So I think it's Montana Tech and Dickinson State, but at the end of the year, if I got somebody from Valley City, telling me I told you so, or somebody from Dakota State saying, I'll be like, yeah, you guys were. There wasn't a lot of separation between thinking where 1 and 5 could be in that half of the league. So
Jason, with this recording, you did say Dakota State as a dark horse, so yes. there is documentation of that dark horse pick by the one Jason Dannelly.
Yeah, and I'll just say everybody Mayville, you never know. And I'll go back and say see, I said you never know, and then they can't
keep
be
your
mad.
eye on.
Keep your eye on. Let's go to the West. Now, this is probably one of the most competitive, flat out slobber knocker, get after it leagues in NAIA football. You got Western, you got Carroll, you got Southern Oregon, College of Idaho, Eastern Oregon. And I said this in my preview, which you can read on victorysportsnetwork.com. I said this in my preview, 1 through 5. Okay. I think it's Western. I've got Western rated very high in my top 25. It could very well be Carroll. It could be Southern Oregon. College of Idaho has got some great athletes there. They've got new kind of quarterback that they're going to be working in to get more experience at that position after, having a regular starter in Andy Peters the last couple of years. Eastern Oregon, they've got to work in a new starting quarterback, but they've got some guys that have been there. So this is one of those leagues that just because of how competitive the Frontier Conference is year over year, this prediction is as good as the paper or screen that it was written on. I would not be surprised by the only thing that I would be absolutely surprised by is if it's Arizona Christian or Simpson right now competing for a conference title. That would shock me. But any of those other 5, I'd shrug my shoulders and go, yep, probably could happen.
Well, I think a lot of your pick has to do with the best player in the league, who happens to be the quarterback at Montana Western, who is back. Mm-hmm. I think Palandri is the man in this league. I think he's the best player in this league. Well, arguably with a great running back and running game.
Yeah, you just got Southern Oregon fans throwing stuff at the screen saying, "What about Yates?"
Yates and Player are the 2 best players in this league. Okay, we'll say that. Is that fair?
There you go. That's fair.
From a backfield standpoint. But I do think with Western's style of play, the way they play offensively, Palandri is asked to do a ton. He's got great weapons. He's been there and done it. He really has. He's established the point where, he's in contention for National Player of the Year, all those different things, and he's returning. I love the way they do things there, and I love the offense. And I think they've done a great job, putting themselves in a situation to make those deep runs. In that you remember, Jason, last year we talked about, it's this is a pass-happy offense. They developed a running game last year.
They did.
And were much more balanced. And I think really it did them such a favor, getting into the latter part of the year, saving Palandry a little bit, so maybe some shots, a good balanced run game certainly helps, a passing game certainly. So you saw that a lot last year, and I think they're constantly evolving and growing as a program and in this offense, even with Palandry and his skills. So I'm looking forward to what they do this year. I think they are the best team in this league. But we've done this podcast now. This is year 3 now, Jason, of doing this, and we've seen the Carroll College progression every year, a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. And of course, our history, we know what that program is. Is there a bigger blue blood in NAIA football than Carroll College? Probably not. And we're seeing that progression too. So I agree with those 1, 2, then I think 3 are programs that have been there and done it. And the one at the top just happens to have the most experienced quarterback and best quarterback coming back.
Yeah, that's the biggest reason why I put Carroll College and Southern Oregon second and third. They got to break in new quarterbacks this year. They've got some transfers that are coming in with a little bit of experience. They've got guys that have gone through spring ball, but they haven't put it out there for a game yet. And Palandry has put it out there for a lot of games. He's got several offensive weapons back, decent offensive line sitting in front of him, an improved defense, actually more experienced defense, because they had a lot of guys kind of come in last year that were kind of first-year starters on that defense, and some of that experience is back this year. So you have to land on the Bulldogs, but the Saints have got that momentum going. Southern Oregon's got that momentum going. And I think with a running back like Yates out there, he's the sort of guy that in the league, you get into one of those mid-October, mid-November games, at Northern, at Carroll, or wherever you might be at, and it's 30 degrees. It probably snowed a little bit that week, and you're going to have to grind it out. Well, you got Yates you can give the ball to. So that's kind of an X factor in this league. But yeah, I mean, it's Westerns to lose, but there's 5 other teams that could make it Westerns to lose. It's so competitive.
Well, we saw it every week last year, Jason, where Southern Oregon knocked somebody off, and then the next week they stubbed their toe against another quality of conference opponent. It's going to be that type of deal again. I mean, can Western run the table? Yeah, they can, certainly. I think it's going to be quite an achievement if they do, because it's like you said, there's such depth, there's such strength in this league. It's going to be a dogfight every single week. Pardon the pun there with the Bulldogs, but it's there you go. It's going to be a battle every single week. We talked about last week, talking about, how many teams can get in from this conference. There certainly have been the last couple of years, so many that are contention. And I think had a great argument to be a part of that. Those at large bids that are like, we're watching the tape, we're watching the games and saying, this is a playoff quality team. But unfortunately they're playing this league and they've just taken 3 L's, this year. Yeah. I mean, it's a tough deal. So each and every week, this gauntlet of the schedule is going to be a challenge because really good quality programs, Jason. But again, they can only take so many. So each and every week, they have to bring A games, no question, each one of these programs.
If I had $1 billion and I could just do NAIA football all the time, the one thing that I would do, and it's a good transition here, I would take the best team from the Frontier Conference that doesn't make the playoffs and the best team from the Great Plains Athletic Conference that doesn't make the playoffs, and I have them come across, and I'd have them come up, and we'd play right here where I'm at in Fargo, and we'd have ourselves a little postseason bowl game. So
absolutely,
I would love to do it, but I will need your donations. You can see it in the corner over there of the screen. You click that donate button. We can be $20 closer to the $1 billion we need for me to be able to do this as a full-time gig, right?
Yeah.
Great Plains Athletic. You'd come along with it too, Pat. That would be also to hire.
I think we could probably survive on that, Jason. You probably pay me a salary and maybe hire a couple folks and probably
10 mil.
10
mil.
Yeah,
we can do it for a while for 10 mil. Yeah. Anyway, let's get into the Great Plains Athletic Conference prediction. This is how I laid the teams out. Now the coaches came out with their preseason poll. We agree on 1 and 2. Me and the GPAC coaches agree on 1 and 2. We disagree on 3 through 7, and we also disagree on 8 through 11. So we have all of the same teams in the same area there, but we disagree on the order. And what I really think is you're going to have 2 teams here, Morningside and Northwestern, a lot like last year. that I think are going to separate themselves. Dort was right there last year. Concordia was right there last year. Both teams were trying to make the NAI postseason and just, by a sliver didn't make it happen. I think you're going to see Morningside and Northwestern separate themselves a little more. One of those two teams, I think it's going to be Morningside, will go undefeated in the conference. Now they've got a heck of a non-conference game against Benedictine coming up here when we start off the season. But I think Morningside will go undefeated in the conference. I think Northwestern will have one loss in the conference, that being to Morningside. So that means all those other teams have already got 2 losses. So you're talking your third place team is probably going to be a 3-loss team. Your fourth place team, fifth place teams are probably going to be 4-loss teams. So you're talking 6-4, 7-11, or 7-4. So 3 through 6, 3 through 7 in this league, I think are all going to linger between 7-4, 7-3, depending on how many games they're playing, to 5-5. That's where everybody's going to be there. And then you'll get down to the bottom 4 where you're going to have those teams, under 500. And I just think the middle part of the Great Plains Athletic Conference is going to be so competitive. I moved Hastings up a little higher than the coaches had them because Hastings has kind of got a local hometown kid that is coming back. After being at University of South Dakota as a quarterback. He's coming back with experience and will be kind of, running that offense there. And they've got a good group of kids that are coming back. So I think this could be a year where you see Hastings kind of move from that bottom third of the league to the upper middle third of the league. I'm going to get yelled at by Dort fans. I am sorry. You guys still have a great team. You're going to have a great team. You probably are going to be 7-3. Heck, you might even be 8-2. You might get up to where you are. But what I look at with Dort University and what has been the creme de la creme, if you will, of the Defenders program the last couple of years, it has been their defense. That defense has been absolutely stout. It shut down, everybody that wasn't named Morningside and Northwestern in this league. The problem is they've lost all of those guys. They've lost a ton of experience on defense. So I think they're going to have some issues. And in some of those close games, I think they're going to get nipped this year. It's just my opinion. Still going to be a great program, and they'll probably prove me wrong. Dort likes to do that. But this is kind of how I landed on it. Your thoughts on the old GPAC, Pat?
Well, again, I think 3 through 6, the ones to talk about. 1 and 2 are pretty simple. And again, not to, pass over those 2 great programs. We talk about them a lot. Let's be honest.
Yeah. They'll get their time the rest of the season.
They're going to get their due. But, looking at 3 through 6, I think, Concordia and Dort last year had such outstanding seasons. And, kind of your thoughts on Concordia, just out of curiosity, of maybe having them right around that, 5-6 mark. Just out of curiosity, your thoughts behind it.
Graduate a great wide receiver, graduate a great running back, quarterback. I think that was a big thing for them last year. They had a lot of offense with those 3 guys. Mm-hmm. And I inexperience coming in, you're coming into a league where inexperience will hurt you. And I think that they drop a couple games. I think they probably lose to Midland and Dort this year, along with Morningside and Northwestern. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of gets them in that toss-up game of staying above 500. So I think Concordia is right there. It's got a great coach. I mean, Patrick Dabercow, that guy's great. Their defensive coordinator, Corby Ostin, he's been there forever. And I actually have a fun history with Corby Ostin. I always kind of joke with him on Twitter. Both he and I grew up on farms in Platte County, Nebraska. And his family, I believe that if I remember right, they were Brown Swiss, dairy farmers, and we were Holstein dairy farmers. So we've had a rivalry since we were 3 at the Platte County Fair.
These are things I know nothing about.
You're just like Brown Swiss. Is that a cheese?
Yeah. No, I figured out it was a breed of cow. I know I've got it.
There you go.
No, I got it.
There you go.
Yeah. I like every time it's funny, I drive by farms, I just think those cows look delicious.
So do I.
Yeah, they just look delicious. Always freak my kids out with that one. So back to the
GPAC.
Back to the GPAC. I think, like you said, though, I like your thought with Hastings, because it seems like every year you're gonna have the top 2. Okay, hate to be that guy, but you're gonna have the top 2. But you're gonna have that program that may improve a record by 2 extra games. There were that 5-5 team. Now they're a 7-3 team. or even up to potentially knocking one of those top two off, much like Dort last year, much like Concordia. So I like your Hastings pick. Again, is that one you keep our eye on, and maybe a dark horse. I like that pick. Again, traditional power. I mean, they've been in. How long has Hastings played football in the
When
AA?
did they invent it?
That's why
About then, yeah. They
18
one
whatever,
of the
early 1900s. I mean, they have been a mainstay in this affiliation forever. So I think it's great when they're good and competitive. So it's great to hear that you have that thought, and I hope it comes to fruition because I think it's a good thing. But yeah, the top two are the top two, man. Just I mean, national championship coaches and programs, and just do it the right way. So it's going to be tough for anyone to knock either of those off. But I do like the Hastings idea of being maybe the dark horse this year that elevates their game.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so let's go to another conference where we're kind of going to do the same thing as we move into the Heart North. You got the defending national champion in here. There's not a lot of argument that you can have at the one spot here. I mean, Grandview is Grandview, defending national champion, player of the year. I mean, yes, they have a new head coach this year, but I mean, we're not talking about inexperience here. So I really think we're talking, I think, in the Heart North about spots 2 through 4. St. Ambrose is improved. They've gotten better these last couple of years. But I really think Peru State, Graceland, and William Penn, are the ones that are vying for that second spot. And if one of those teams can really, shore things up in their non-conference schedule and get the wins that they need, we could see 2 coming out of this conference. Right now, I say it's Peru State because they return a ton of ball players. There's not the question marks like Graceland has. Graceland's got one of the best players in all of the NAIA in Gerald Monroe as a wide receiver. They've got a 4-way quarterback battle going into their camp and coming into week 1. Now, that's obviously the coaches probably got a little better idea of how that's going to work out. But I really feel like, Graceland's got some questions there. And William Penn is on the rise. They're not quite there yet, I don't think. But Peru State is my pick for number 2 and maybe an at-large into the NAIA Championship Series.
I'm going to pick Graceland. I liked
where I don't argue that, yeah.
Yeah, I was very impressed them late in the year last year. And I will tell you, Jason, from experience, when you have a program that wins a national championship in your conference, every one of these teams are like, man, we've got to elevate. We have to do more. Mm-hmm. It's a more of a focus in our offseason weightlifting and conditioning programs. Our spring ball has a greater purpose to say, hey, our rival, those guys down in Des Moines won this thing. We got to do more. We've got to be better. We have to elevate. So I'm anxious to see somebody in this league I think is really going to make a great push for that at-large bid. They're not going to win the league. Grandview's going to win this league. I mean, I'd bet any amount of money that I've ever earned that happens. But I do think number 2 in this league, whoever it may be, maybe even 2 or 3 with Graceland and Peru State, and I agree those are the next 2, can be a really good football program this year. Because you saw that progression last year as the season went on. I saw that with Graceland. I paid attention. I knew Coach Ross, and I know he's moved on. But it's one of those things where you knew they were going the right direction with his leadership, and they're passing things over to an assistant coach now to keep that thing going. Because I think that program's on the rise. It's one thing I did see. And Peru had a great year too. And again, you see the returning guys, and on paper they certainly look that that second team in the league type part. Why you picked them, I'm sure. So, Vikings are going to win it, man. I mean, come on.
Yeah. But Graceland could be very scary with Coach Phil Stabeck there if that team is disciplined and they finish ball games. Every one of their losses last year, they led at some point in the game. Mm-hmm. They had 3 games where they led late, like into the third quarter, didn't finish ball games. Got to finish ball games if you're going to put yourself up there in the same sentence as Grandview national champion and Graceland certainly has the talent to do that. And if they can, figure out what's going on at the quarterback position early on, get through those non-conference games, they'll be right there competing with them. So let's go to the other half of the Heart, that being the Heart South. We had 3 teams from this league make the NAIA Championship Series last year in Benedictine, Baker, and Mid-American Nazarene. All of those teams are in contention again this year. You've, of course, got Benedictine, who I think – we talk a lot about Grandview, and we talk about Kaiser, and we've already talked about Montana Western and some of these other teams. Benedictine is that team that last year, when you watched how they were playing down the stretch and playing in the semifinals, you went, that team is a play away from the national championship game. And they were very competitive in their non-conference game early last season against the national champion Grandview. So I think the Ravens are the favorite in this league. I follow it with Baker just because of the quarterback play. You got Truman Julesgaard coming back there. Mid-American Nazarene's got a lot of questions on offense at the quarterback position to be answered because they graduated a really good one there. That was the face of their offense for a number of years. And Missouri Valley and Missouri Baptist are two teams I think that are on the rise. I think Missouri Valley with, an alum in LaQuinton back as their head coach, you're going to see that program really start to battle in the Heart South and potentially become one of the elite programs again.
I want to use the team names here regarding your order, your hierarchy here. I'm going to do this. It's called Julesgaard number 2, and it's Dooley number 1. Those guys are really good football players. And again, I know it's the program. I'm not saying that. They're great programs.
Yeah.
But those two quarterbacks are great players. And I'll tell you, Jason, I don't think anyone was playing as well at the end of the year as Dooley was. I thought Dooley was absolutely fantastic. And again, we talked about last week's show. I thought the Kaiser Benedictine game in the playoff last year was just absolutely phenomenal. Semifinals for the ages. I mean, just unbelievable. The circumstance, the way the Ravens played in that game. It's a shame they lost the game, but what a great victory for Kaiser. But man, what a football game. But you're seeing that program again. You have a returning quarterback who's been so productive and has been there and done that with his program, and even at the national level at this point. Man, I love them this year. I love the Ravens this year in general. And I think Coach Osborne is just awesome. I think he's a first class, young coach that's just on top of it. I love everything. You had a great interview with him last year that you can just tell this guy knows what the heck he's doing. He's building something, off of the great legacy of Coach Wilcox and building something very, very special there. And I think the world of that team, and we'll talk more about the national championship predictions and things like that. They're certainly in contention. And I think they're at that level from a program standpoint and a great quarterback at the top.
Going back to Benedictine real quick in that conversation that I had with Coach Osborne before before the championship game, when we weren't on the air, he said something to me that gave me a lot of respect for him. And it's so dumb. And at the time, I never even thought about making it. And yeah, granted, it was off the record, but I don't think he would have any problem with me saying it. He was talking about their trip to Texas Wesleyan. And one of the first things he said, when we shut off the mics, we were talking, man, that facility that they've got down there, Texas Wesleyan, that place needs to host national championship games. And that was the first time I heard it. And then when I heard that if the championship game was up, I said to myself, I bet you anything is going to end up in Fort Worth. I bet you it's going to end up at the home of Texas Wesleyan, which is an independent school district that they play at, and it's an 8,000 seat stadium. But I got a lot of respect for him to go on the road. Yes, he got the win, but to also have the rightness of mind to look around and go, this would be a great place for a championship game. And it ended up working out that way.
Absolutely. What better place for football in, the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex?
Yes. Looking forward to it. Hey, possibly we can get down there. We move on to the KCAC. We go to the Kessinger division here. There was the KCAC kind of switched divisions around a little bit. So there's some teams that were in divisions last year. They're in opposite divisions now. So it was part of their plan, and this is not a surprise. It might be a surprise to some fans, but we knew they were going to restructure the league this year. And with this restructuring, I think it really puts Evangel ahead of everybody else in the Kessinger division. I think they're number 1 with the bullet. I think you got Tabor with some really good returning players and quite a few returning starters, offensive, defense, and of course, head coach Mike Gardner there. I think that program is going to be number 2. Now, the coaches and I, then after that, the wheels fell off. I've got Ottawa 3. They had them 5. I think they had they had Avila as 3, Bethel as 4, I believe. And no, Bethel is, I don't remember how they had it, but we had 1 and 2 the same, and everything else was different. I think Ottawa bounces back this year. I think Coach Davis there does a really good job. I think last year was a humbling experience for that team. They've got a lot of players that are back on it, and they know, hey, we don't want to have that feeling again. So that's what I see in the Kessinger division.
Beware of the fighting Swedes.
Yeah, I think Bethany's improving. You got Mike Gardner, you got Mike Grossner there, pardon me.
Absolutely.
A guy that has built programs, been in national championship games.
No doubt. He's a good football coach. Got to coach against Coach Grosser many times. And they probably have the coolest nickname. And I have no Swedish blood at all in running through the veins here, but one of the coolest names of all time in sports history. But yeah, I agree with you, Jason. 1 and 2 for sure. And I'm excited about Ottawa. Ottawa's just been, again, they've been playing football as long as Hastings has in the NAIA.
Yeah.
Certainly. So they're going to be back. And, it was kind of a weird year last year for them, but they went back in contention. Never count out Coach Gardner at Tabor College, man. The mad scientist. I hated coaching against that guy. My goodness, he drove me crazy. The stuff he threw at.
Hey, good coaches will do that.
Absolutely, he's a good guy. I'm kidding. It wasn't pain to play against him.
And yeah, well, I'll get it. I'm going to hold my comment on what he's done at Tabor, but him and they've really built a nice program there, and where that program was late 90s, 80s, early 2000s before. Was it Mike McCarthy Tim McCarthy was the head coach, and Gardner was the assistant, and then Gardner became the head coach. Like they've done a really nice job into making Tabor into a nice program. All right, let's go to the other division here. If I don't keep clipping through these, we're going to have a 2-hour show here, and at some point I need to go to bed tonight. So Bissell division, I think it's Friends. I think they're not number one with the bullet. They're my pick. I think Southwestern and Kansas Wesleyan and McPherson are all teams that could compete for the conference title here. But with Friends, the way they played down the stretch, the way they played in the postseason, I'm high on the Falcons. I'm high on Coach Harrison and what he has done with that program in such a short period of time. I put him at 1. Kansas Wesleyan is my X factor here. New head coach, but they've got a lot of really nice key components back on offense and on defense. And they were a team that made the postseason last year. So they could be right there again. They maybe faltered a little early in the season in their non-conference schedule, but they won their league. And now being in the more competitive Bissell division, well, I feel more competitive Bissell division this year, they could be the X factor in this league.
Yeah, these are going to be great games in this conference this year. And, this is the much maligned KCAC. It just has been, right? For the last, since you and I have ever known NAIA football, right? But I think this division, this Bissell division, I mean, you legitimately have postseason type teams in this league that are battling every single week. And I think it's going to be very competitive. Maybe as competitive as it's been in a long time in this division, in this league in general. So I agree with you. I think Friends they're the hardest team to prepare for. I mean, just the system is so difficult. Every one of these other conference opponents have taken time on Friends' offense and worked on it in spring. Have a plan for it coming up for this fall because it's difficult. But at the same time, I think there's those top 3, and I think, like you said, McPherson's on the rise. I think it's a very, very good league and legitimate now to say, hey, it's not just get a KCAC team in the postseason. These guys are legitimate postseason teams. I mean, these are playoff level teams now.
Yeah, there was a time 20 years ago that KCAC made the playoffs, and you just counted it as, all right, that's a win for whoever got the KCAC team. Well, last year it was losses for whoever got the KCAC team.
No doubt.
Friends and Southwestern both advancing. Southwestern playing Indiana Wesleyan very tough. Friends playing the now national champion, the toughest game that they had the entire season. So you can't look down your nose at the KCAC anymore, folks. This is a tough, rugged conference, and I'm excited to see what these teams are able to do this year. All right, so we get a little closer to where you are, Pat, but not quite there yet. Mid-South Conference. I did it, man.
Wow,
I did it. This was the one where I'm gonna catch so much crap for this because I think most people are gonna say, well, how do you not put Georgetown at number 1 with what they've got coming back and everything going on there? I just didn't. I think the top 4 teams in this conference are all viable to win the conference. And Cumberland, Tennessee, and the University of the Cumberlands are potentially right there too. It could make me eat a lot of crow this year. I like what Campbellsville's got back on offense. They've got a lot of really good returning players on defense. They were that team last year, and we talked about this in our last show, Pat, that this is a step year for them. This is a chance for Campbellsville. Like last year, they kind of, quote, came out of nowhere. But then they lost a couple games, and by close margins. This is a chance for them to use that experience from last year and take a step forward and win a Mid-South Conference title.
Totally agree. The Georgetown thing, yeah, it's a bold move putting Campbellsville ahead of Georgetown. Georgetown's obviously a blue blood program, been exceptional in the last handful of years with Coach Oliver. Now new football coach. It's a little bit different, but he's been on staff. And then you have returners that they do. At the same time, Campbellsville was a play away, Jason, from knocking them off last year.
Yeah.
And probably getting themselves in the postseason. At least certainly would have been in much greater contention. They were still on that cusp last year. And then you have 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I can't even fathom this because I played against Faulkner University at one point. You have them at 7. I guarantee they got players. I guarantee they do.
Yeah.
And I know Shannon Housekeeper and the University of Cumberland is going to be a tough football team, guaranteed. So this is a deep, deep league, like you mentioned, Jason. But you got to pick them. You got to rank them somehow for things of this nature we're talking about, of doing these type of shows, and obviously for the websites. You got to do it. But I think this is wide open in a lot of ways, and I do think 1, 2, pretty darn good. I think we'll know how good Campbellsville is the last weekend of August, playing the University of St. Francis here in Fort Wayne.
And we haven't really mentioned Bethel, and Bethel's got a new head coach. Really big, really strong recruiter. He's got some dudes coming in there, and they were questionable at quarterback at times last year. From what I'm hearing, transfer wise, they may have shored that up this year. Man, it's a good league.
Yeah, it is. It's a deep league. We're saying that a lot today. I agree with you. There's a lot of good programs in that division.
And that'll be a bigger conversation later, as we get through more of these leagues. But a couple, 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago, when I started doing this, you kind of had your top 8 in NAIA football. And then you had like kind of 15, 20 teams after that were pretty good. And then everything else. I really feel like, yes, you've got some elite programs. Maybe it's 10 elite programs still, 12 elite programs. But that 12 through 45, 12 through 50 spot in NAIA football is I feel like is right now is as strong as I have seen it in the last 25 years. There's just so many teams that are in the middle of the conference that are one play away from being the number 2 team in the conference, from being the best team in the conference. And I think in years past, like we didn't see that. Like you just looked at leagues and went, they'll win it. Mm-hmm. And those guys are going to be an at-large.
Yeah, I mean, and that I think it's the strength of our affiliation. It's gotten so much better because you couldn't be more right than your statement. 20, 25 years ago, you kind of had an idea. You'd almost pick the Final Four, and you'd put a large bet in Las Vegas on it that you're probably going to hit it. I mean, it's just the way it was. It seemed like the same teams were there every year. And now, I mean, yes, you do have those elite programs, but there is certainly a lot more parity, like you said, Jason, I think in that, that bottom half of the top 25, certainly. And those teams that are on, the rise to that top 25.
Mid-States Football Association, Mid-East. Now we're in your area code.
My backyard.
We're in your backyard here. Finally.
Easy for you to say.
So this league was really easy for me to figure out. Number 1. I mean, it's Indiana Wesleyan. Mm-hmm. I think Taylor had a great season last year. I still think the gap between 1 and 2 in this league, last year maybe it was this, maybe we're here, maybe Taylor's a little closer, but there's still a gap there between those two. I think Taylor is a team that last year contended to make the NAIA Championship Series. They could potentially push for it this year. Once I get past Taylor, I don't know about 3, 4, 5. I mean, Siena Heights, unfortunately, going into their final season of college football, we saw it last year with Concordia. I hate to see it for that staff and those kids. Do they rally? Do they pull it all together? And we see something special out of them this year. They've got the players there to do it. But it's just so tough to predict going into like the final year that a college is going to exist. Then you get down to Defiance, who improved as we got through the season last year. Lawrence Tech is going to have a new head coach again this year. So it's tough to kind of figure out where they're going. And then Madonna's a program that is improving, but I just don't think they're in that in the conversation to move out of that 6th spot in this league.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head with all these, Jason. The one that may be interchangeable is Defiance up to 3. That'd be the only thing I would question potentially. It's in Ohio, and now there's a scholarship affiliate at NAIA school in Ohio. I mean, it's about an hour from Fort Wayne. It's about an hour from Toledo. It's in a great spot for recruiting, and they're recruiting the heck out of Indiana. They're recruiting all of Western Ohio and Southern Michigan. So I look for them to make a jump potentially. Coming from the Division III up now to the NAIA, getting scholarship. Recruiting now for this is the 3rd year of it now for them. So I look for them to take a jump. I agree with you with Taylor. Jason, I'm telling you right now, I saw them in person last year. You would not believe the physicality, the effort, and the speed that Taylor plays with. Are they the most talented football team in America? No. They're not in the top 20. But I'm telling you, everything that they have from an effort standpoint, discipline, they and Dort are almost identical. You can't tell them apart. I mean, obviously, Coach came from Dort. So, I mean, very, very similar in that regard. Tough on defense, just all those things. But I think Taylor's a very good football program. They are right on that cusp. I'm telling you, Jason, to be in contention for an at-large. They're not going to beat Indiana Wesleyan, I don't think. But it's going to be a dogfight. And I think anytime anyone plays the Taylor Trojans, better buckle up. They're a good football program.
Yeah, cinch it up. They're a physical team. And you're going to get, like you said, you're going to get everything from them every single time that they go on the field. So Coach Mingo, Aaron Mingo. It's one of the more fun coaches' names to say, Aaron Mingo. All of a sudden, I'm David Letterman here. Hey, it's Indiana schools. It makes sense, right? All right, so let's head on over to the other half of the Mid-States Football Association, the Midwest. Very tough league here. 1 through 5, man. Like it was that way last year, all the way to the end. And I'm picking Marion. I think they've got the most returning. I really felt like at the end of the year last year, they started playing their best football. And I think Coach Karras will have those guys going. Plus, at the end of the year last year, Marion felt slighted. They were wondering, okay, how are we not even being like really talked about as an at-large to make it to the NAIA Championship Series? And you can bet that fueled them, this year. So I picked Marion 1. I picked St. Francis in Fort Wayne there as number 2. They got a ton of returning guys as well. They're going to contend for that conference title as well. But I just think Marion's a little bit better. I think St. Xavier is going to, bounce back a little bit this year to get that 3 spot. And Olivet Nazarene, the thing about Olivet Nazarene that people don't realize is the number of years in a row that they have had a winning season. 8 consecutive winning seasons. I had to scroll up there to remember what I was talking about there, but 8 consecutive winning seasons for Olivet Nazarene. This isn't a program that at the 4 spot is going to be 3-7. They're going to be 6-4, 7-3, competing with the upper half of this league. And I put St. Francis, Illinois, I put the Fighting Saints down there just because they've got a lot of skill positions that they're going to replace on offense. And a lot of offense last year ran through those guys.
Yeah. Tumulties are gone, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, excuse me. I agree with you. I think, the St. Francis Marion game is going to be the biggest game of the year, obviously, in the league. And it was a great game last year. St. Francis pulled it out, won the conference championship, got the automatic qualifier. And like you, I don't think St. Xavier can go 2 straight years with the injury bug that they faced last year. So I definitely anticipate them to be on the rise once again. They're too good of a coaching staff. They're too proud of a program to be around the 500 mark. That's not going to happen 2 years in a row. So I think those top 3, I think certainly. And I'd tell you St. Francis, I'm going to talk about St. Francis of Indiana here in my backyard. I think Josh Kolk is a great quarterback. I think he is in contention or could be in the conversation of the top 99. I think he's that type of player. Coming off an injury, though, did get hurt in the last game of the season at Southwestern, the playoff game. So he is, from what I understand, again, I don't have as much insider information as I once did now that Dad's not there any longer. But I think he's doing well. Anticipate him coming back and being healthy this season, from what I understand. And I think we'll know, again, I think the St. Francis Campbellsville early season non-conference game will tell us a lot about both those programs. Because, I mean, Jason, to me, that's like a top 15 matchup, top 18 matchup. No, it's not technically, but I think it could be viewed as that. 2 playoff level teams, going at. We'll know how good they are. And I think St. Francis got a great group on defense coming back. So I think it's a really good football team. And Marion, Coach Karras is a great football coach, Jason. I mean, I'm such a fan. He's a great friend, and I've done battle with him many, many times over the years. And there is no doubt in my mind, if I had to rank one of the best jobs, if not the best job in NAIA, I would probably say Marion University in Indianapolis, Indiana. That's my opinion, having to face them and recruit against them for as many years as I did. It's a great setup. And I know Coach Karras' staff are great coaches. They're going to be back in that national contention once again. This is year 3 for Coach. I would fully anticipate them elevating their game, so I can't disagree with you, them winning the league. It's going to be the St. Francis Marion game once again of how that all shakes out. But those 3 programs at the top that you had are some of the proudest in the NAIA's history. And I think the world of all of them, and I think it's a very, very deep conference, probably along the lines of that Frontier West. I mean, it's not far off that. This side of the mid-states is pretty darn good.
It's solid top. I mean, just like I was looking at there, 1 through 5 at some point last year, every single one of those teams was vying for a position to get into the NAIA postseason. That's just how dang competitive it was. So I'm looking forward to
contention. All 5 of those, like you said, very good. And Judson's talented. I'm telling you right now, they're talented. They got guys. So
new head coach into Judson this year, so we'll see if that program can rise from that bottom spot in the Mid-States Football Association's Midwest Division. All right, so we now go to where the home of the national championship is going to be, the Sooner Athletic Conference, Fort Worth, Texas, and the team that is number 1 in this league, at least my pick for number 1 in this league, is Texas Wesleyan. You know, they're going to be playing all their home games in that stadium where the national championship game is going to be played. And I'm sure they'd like to see a few of those in the postseason get there as well. This is a team that we saw last year was on the verge. You know, they led Benedictine early. They gave the Ravens fits before Benedictine was able to bring things back and ultimately win that game on the road. And we talked about it in the last show, Texas Wesleyan, Ottawa, Arizona. These are 2 teams that are in that, like they're ready to make that jump. They've got to try to make that jump, and this is a year to potentially do that. I think Texas Wesleyan is going to separate themselves from the rest of the conference this year. I think Ottawa is your next best team with the new head coach into there. And then spots really 3 through 7, 3 through 8. You could jumble those around. I mean, Texas College, I picked 8th in the league this year because they just don't have much returning from last year. But that's a team that had 7 wins last year and had a winning program for the first time since 2005. You know, that's tremendous. So I almost feel bad putting them down there at 8, but that's where they landed as I kind of looked through all the profiles and saw what people had coming back. Oklahoma Panhandle, I think they're one of those teams, kind of like how you described Taylor. You're going to get their best effort. You're going to get a physical ball team, and that's a team that has potential to jump into that 3 spot. Heck, maybe even knock off a number 2. I mean, they just play so dang hard there in Goodwell, Oklahoma, that I can't help but think that the Aggies are somebody that could make a little mid-tier noise in this conference.
Mm-hmm. I love Texas Wesleyan. I think the big thing for them, Jason, we talked about last year, they needed that postseason experience of playing a team like Benedictine. They need to see that to really take it to the next level. There is a history, Jason, we talked about it in the pre-show a little bit, of the teams in year 6 of a program that really make the big jump. Could be Marion University, could be Kaiser University, won national championships in year 6. Grandview won their first national championship in their 6th season. I'm going to talk about Texas Wesleyan and St. Thomas, both in year 6 of their programs for a big, big jump. Be ready for it this year.
Yeah, I think that Texas Wesleyan has got that potential to make the jump. They've got the athletes. They've got the quarterback back. I'm sure they'd like to have last year's running back back with them as well. But hey, kids graduate. Yeah, kids actually do graduate from NAIA institutions and do have to go out to the workforce. They can't, stick around all the time like it seems like they do in Division I football, where it's like, man, that guy's still there. He's still playing. Although we do have a little bit of that this year in the NAIA. We got a few guys there in year 5 or maybe even year 6 with the program that are back and going to be contending for titles. But yeah, Texas Wesleyan, Pat, I think that they're the ones that we're going to look at in this conference and say, all right, they could be a contender this year. Let's move on. Let's go down south a little further, down to the Sun Conference, and I'll probably catch some flack. The team that was in last year's national championship game, I have picked second in this league. I think, just like you talked about, Pat, St. Thomas is in that transition year 6. They return Keely Watson at quarterback. They've got David Hayes at the wide receiver position. Their defense looks stout. They did lose a couple really good football players on that side of the ball, but I think just as a whole, what Coach Reichel has been building for, it's kind of reaching that pinnacle this year. And that's nothing against Kaiser. Kaiser and St. Thomas have battled the last couple of years. I just think when Kaiser and St. Thomas play this year, I think St. Thomas will win that game, and that will be what decides this conference. And you've got Southeastern sitting right there as a team that almost made the postseason last year as well, had 8 wins. They're going to compete. And then you've got Weber International, Florida Memorial, and Warner right there. I think Warner's going to be improved. They're at the bottom of the league last year, but I think what they've got coming back and a few other changes, within the program is going to help them improve quite a bit. So the Sun Conference, very competitive again. And I think we'll be seeing, 2 teams that we'll be talking about a lot in terms of the national championship games, the national rankings and all that, and potentially a 3rd or 4th here.
Mm-hmm. I have a couple points in this league. One, I love your St. Thomas pick, and I mentioned, kind of a preview of what I talked about with Texas Wesleyan. I feel St. Thomas is on that same trajectory. Year 6, really competing at the national level. Is this the year they can knock off Kaiser? I think first and foremost, I'm not going to predict who's going to win that game right now, Jason, but I will tell you it is going to be must-see television. You have to watch that game. Stream it any way you possibly can, because I think that's going to be one for the ages. That's a really good football matchup here, this season. Love Shea Spencer. I think he's kind of the X factor for Kaiser to get back into that national championship game level, getting back in the Final Four into the national championship game potentially. So I think the world of him. And it's going to be a revolving door, I think, at Kaiser to some level of their location with mobility of rosters. At the same time, they're going to reload with some unbelievable talent. And St. Thomas is the same level to in a similar way because of location. But I've got the other point I wanted to make, Jason, is keep your eye on Southeastern. Keep your eye out. Keep your eye out and on for Southeastern. I'm telling you, they're well coached. I know Coach Wall fairly well. And you can see that progression since he's been there, that they're getting back in that national contention, like you said last year, just right on the outside looking into the postseason because they're in a league with 2 other great football teams that were postseason teams. But that's going to be an interesting 3-way race, in my opinion. I'm not going to predict this yet, but I would not be surprised if a Southeastern doesn't knock off one of those. They have the potential of doing that. I believe that.
Yep.
And so you have 3 legitimate high level. I'm not just saying there's barely sneaking in the playoffs. I think 3 teams that can make a deep run potentially in the postseason. And I'm going to say that about Southeastern. I see that progression. And they're doing some great things there. What a facility and just, great setup there. Yep. There's 3 great programs, and I think very highly of all 3.
Yeah, I have no argument on this side. My pick is going to be St. Thomas, but yeah, when they play Southeastern, if Southeastern gets them, I'll go, yeah, they had it. When you start getting down a little further, the real shock is like, does Weber's got a nice returning squad this year. Can Weber get one of those games and knock off one of these top 3 that we're talking about? Well, then it kind of throws the entire conference into a little bit of chaos here. There's just a lot of talent in the Sun Conference. And as this league has grown and matured and teams have gotten more years under their belt, you'll start to see that. And you'll really start to see that at the national level. Weber was the old dog in this entire league, having started their program back in the early 2000s. And they've kind of been the one that, when the league came together, I expected them to kind of, kick up to the top, but Southeastern got there, right away. And then, Kaiser has come around, St. Thomas has come around. So there's just some really nice programs in this league and ones I think they'll be super competitive nationally.
I think
so with that.
I'm sorry.
No,
I was going to say one quick thing. I think the Sun Conference and Sooner Conference also probably the most likely for changing of rosters because of the location. You're talking about the 2 biggest football states, arguably in the entire country, or at least, as Oklahoma thrown in that next to Texas. But Texas and Florida, there's going to be mobility, Jason. There's so many college playing football players from those 2 states. I mean, hundreds upon hundreds, thousands. And I could see some rosters changing from here, a little bit more in those conferences than others. So maybe there's some surprise teams maybe in those leagues.
Well, a great comparison is this. Okay, so we talked, one of the first leagues we talked about, the Frontier Conference East, Montana Tech and Dickinson both have to replace experienced quarterbacks. It's a lot tougher to get a quarterback into Dickinson or into Montana Tech if they're not, you got guys in the immediate area that are great quarterbacks, but you don't have that ability to go out and say, okay, we've got some mobility here in our area to maybe find a quarterback that wants to come back home or is coming from an FCS or a Division II school that isn't going to have to move very far. He's not going to have to be very far from home. And the comparison I make is Southeastern. Southeastern's going to have a new starting quarterback this year. Their starting quarterback from last year, the Austin kid, is now at Kansas Wesleyan. So Southeastern is going to have a new starting quarterback. If I'm the head coach at Southeastern, Coach Waugh, or I'm Coach Stanton at Dickinson, or if I'm Coach Sampson at Montana Tech, I like being Coach Waugh at Southeastern a lot better, having to replace a quarterback and find a guy maybe with a little bit of experience to lead the team. Now, that's not speaking down at all to those programs because, Coach Stanton and Coach Sampson have got something up their sleeve, and they're going to have some guy that probably starts for them this year that ends up being a 3-year starter and an All-American for him. But I say all that to say, in the short term, Southeastern, like we talked about, they've got that ability to go get that guy and to take that program, from 8, maybe to 9 or 10 wins.
Mm-hmm. And how enticing is to recruit somebody to Florida?
Yeah.
I mean, I like Florida. I'm not saying I don't, but look at my face, Jason. I don't do well in sun.
Yeah.
Like I'm much more a northern guy, but to tell you what, people up north would love the opportunity to go south and play in the great state of Florida or in Texas. I mean, there's some attractive programs from a location standpoint, much more than we've ever had in the NAIA.
I'm being visited by the Furts right now. The old Frankie decided, come here, Franks, come up on camera. We're about ready to talk about who the national championship contenders are. You say hi, Franks?
It's a corgi.
Yeah.
The royal dog.
Hi, Frank. Okay. So yeah, royalty is here. We're going to talk about the royalty in the NAIA. Good timing, Frankie. Thank you very much on that. Segue. All right, so let's get into it. Let's talk about, who our early picks are for a potential national champion or the best teams that we really think that could be there at the end of the year. I'll start. I'm looking at Grandview. Defending national champion, it's always tough for me to pick against a national champion and say, I don't think they're going to do it, especially when they've got the same starting quarterback coming back. So I will write an entire article on this and all of my predictions in the future. But I think Grandview is my one that I say is yep, they're going to be there. I look down at Benedictine and Morningside, and I think, gosh, that's two teams for that first week game. That could mean a lot when we start getting into the postseason and home field advantage and, just knowing each other a little bit. So I like those guys as well. I like Montana Western to come out of the Frontier Conference and possibly make a run at a national title for Coach Norse and the Bulldogs there. St. Thomas is the team that I have picked in the Sun Conference, so I think I have to talk about them as a potential national championship caliber team along with Kaiser. So there's a lot of good teams here. And then you've got Indiana Wesleyan, who for the last 2 years in the months of September and October, I think we would agree they were the best looking team in NAIA football. They just haven't been able to get past that injury bug, Pat, and make that run deep into the playoffs and potentially, really be in contention to win a national title.
Yeah, because of that, I'm not sure we're even talking about them necessarily being a front runner for the national championship. They probably like that. They're kind of maybe, even they're 11-2 team, flying slightly under the radar, maybe from the national, championship contention conversations by people like us. I know they're going to be in contention. I would anticipate, again, we have a huge matchup coming in week 1 with Kaiser and Indiana Wesleyan. It's going to tell us a heck of a lot about both programs, I think. But there's some really good ones there. And again, to me, yes, the defending national champion, Grandview. I think Benedictine is tremendous. Morningside, I think, is going to be back and stronger than they were a year ago. I feel that from them. We talked about Montana Western and Palandry, in particular. And there's a couple others. And again, I mentioned Texas Wesleyan and in St. Thomas. I think it's their year to take that next step. Now, what does that mean? Is it saying win the national championship? I'm not saying that, but I am saying this might be a Final Four type year for one of those two or both. It would not shock me whatsoever. And then there's going to be somebody that's going to surprise someone, or the nation that's going to come kind of out of nowhere. And I don't know who that's going to be. Is it going to be a Campbellsville or a Marion or something like someone like that? or Montana Tech, can somehow find a way to be unscathed in the east side of the frontier. Who knows?
Yeah, I really look at this group in my preseason top 25 as there's a lot of dark horses in here.
Mhm.
Texas Wesleyan could be that team. Northwestern could be that team. Friends, I mean, heck, Friends
Yep.
Friends competed with the best of the best last year. You can't not think that they have got the potential to make a little run this year. All these teams that are in here, I really think, it's the bounce of a ball. It's a turnover here and there. It's an injury in the season that they're the difference from being in this middle tier to being in that upper tier. And Marion is another team that we've talked about that, they things go right for them early in the season. They've got that D2 game against UIndy. If they come out of that with a win,
That's
kind of
huge.
start. That's
It's gonna be a
huge
tough
for
one.
them. It's going to be
It's gonna
very
be real
tough
tough
for them.
They will.
And we kind of get down through the rest of the 25 and everybody else here. I mean, you've got teams that were on the verge of the postseason, teams that were in the postseason last year. It's anybody's game. That's what I love about this time of year in NAIA football. Like, everybody's got hope. You get a couple wins. Somebody that I didn't think about is going to start the season 5-0, and 5 weeks into the season, Pat, you and I are going to be looking at one another going, "Hey, how about insert team name here?" That's awesome for them. So
that's what makes it so much more fun.
Yes.
There's some things that we don't know about yet. There's going to be those transfers like we talk about. There's going to be, or we've talked about, there's going to be an injury or two that have changed maybe a top 5 team. It's like their whole dynamic has changed. What's going to happen next? So it is a long, tough, grueling season. It's physical and it's so competitive. And I'm going to touch on something you brought up earlier, Jason, in the show is there as much parity now in the NAIA as there's been, at least certainly in our time of being aware of it, me coaching it and you covering it. I've been playing. I think it is. You can say that as an argument. I don't think you're wrong in that statement. So, it's a great thing for our affiliation, the amount of the teams we have, the depth that we have, the teams in contention, like you said. Yeah, I think we've got 6, 8, maybe 10 outstanding elite programs that have, certainly if the odds makers were there, are in contention at the highest level for the national championship. But like you said, you got 25 down to maybe 30 teams that are really competitive, are going to be competitive this year, are in contention for a deep run potentially.
Yeah, it's as deep as I have seen it in NAIA football in 25 plus years of being around it as a player, and then as a media person, and then watching it, and then coming back, and it's as deep as I've seen it, and it speaks a lot, to these programs, and speaks a lot to the NAIA as well. You look at the NAIA and the national office and what that was, 20 plus years ago, and where they have come and what they have done for college athletics. It's a completely different organization than what it was when I played starting in 1998 and when I started covering it in 2002 from a media perspective. So I think a lot of kudos has to go to what the NAIA has done to raise the bar and raise the level of what the NAIA level is. Before, it was like, well, it's not the NCAA. That's not even a conversation now. It's its own organization with its own rules, its own driving forces. It's got great leadership and a lot of good people that are trying to move it forward, not only from a national perspective, but from a conference perspective, and all the way down to the institution. So that's my 30-second promo. If the NAIA ever says that I don't support them, I'm going to clip that out and send it to them.
Well, I'm going to say one quick 10-second piece. And you mentioned the institutions, Jason. I mean, look at the expansion that we've had in the last since 2002. Think about when you and I were in college and you started covering the NAIA. Look at the teams in the top 10. How many of those didn't exist in 2002 as a football playing school? Obviously existed, but they weren't playing football. Texas Wesleyan wasn't. St. Thomas wasn't, obviously. Indiana Wesleyan wasn't. Kaiser wasn't. Grandview wasn't. I mean, that's incredible of the expansion in the last 20 to 25 years into national contenders. They go down the list. So, and especially into new regions, in Florida and the southwestern part of, Arizona to Texas, Oklahoma, all those places, those new programs have strengthened, I think, our affiliation and created a true coast to coast. I mean, we'll talk about the northeast part of the United States, but that's the one we're lacking. But it really is. It's, to some coast, the Atlantic Ocean to the West Coast. We have that expansion now. We truly have a national affiliation that's, again, strong as ever.
And depending on how it all goes, we might see people coming back. We could do a whole show on that. Not when we've already done an hour and 15 minutes of talk on NAI football. We probably don't need to go off on any tangents. I love it. It's great.
So good.
A lot of fun. That's really all I've got for everybody that's been watching this. You know, we went through all the conferences, kind of went through our thoughts on national contenders. You know, I'll write a whole article on this. You know, my early inklings lean me towards Grandview, Benedictine, Morningside, Montana Western. Those are the ones that I really, I think if somebody's saying you got to put money on it, Jason, I'm putting money on one of those programs. But then I'm also throwing a bet in on the field because there's a lot of good programs that I think could be right back there again. And of course, I realize what I've just said is I didn't mention Kaiser, who's been in national championship games, and they were in it last year in that sentence. And I've just given them bulletin board material. You're welcome.
And I bet they have one of the most talented rosters in the country, top 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just that I think this is a year that, they'll be 11-2. You know, that's really good. That's still really good. But just you give a little bit off.
Yep. It's going to be a big year.
Any last thoughts, Pat, before we wrap things up? And
no, sir.
Get out of here. Yeah, I do. Got a lot of things to try to do in real life and children, and been a heck of a day.
Great show. Great job.
Hey,
great coverage as always.
I always appreciate you, Pat, bringing in an actual level of expertise and then actually just getting to stare at your face for over an hour and be able to have these conversations with someone, because then I don't go off on tangents with strangers and start talking NAIA football and then they report me to places. It's not good. It's not good. All right, Pat, we'll wrap things up here. I appreciate you coming on, man. You bring so much to the show, and I'm really looking forward to the rest of this season, man.
It'll be a fun year. Can't wait.
He is Pat Donnelly. I'm Jason Dannelly. This is NAIA Football with Dannelly and Donley. We will check you out next week, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be going full mode into previewing the start of the NAIA football season. Go on out there and have a great one. This has been NAIA Football with Dannelly and Donley.